Today we're going to replace a screen on a Huawei Summit. This phone goes by a few different other names for different carriers. We're going to be working with the T-Mobile version today. And as you can see, this one is pretty badly damaged. Our replacement lens actually has a manufacturer logo on it instead of T-Mobile. So we do want to test that and make sure it's working properly before we complete the installation. If you turn the phone over and slide the back panel upward, you can remove that, take out your battery, your SIM card, and if you have a micro SD card, make sure you remove that as well. And around the perimeter of the case, we're going to have 6 T5 Torx screws, and the one in the top right hand corner will be covered by a warranty sticker. So if you're not looking for it, you may miss that one. Make sure that you remove all of these screws before you start prying on the frame. And once we had these out, I found the easiest spot to pry was up in the top right hand corner also. So take your pry tool, and you can almost pull this apart with your fingers. It's pretty easy to get this unsnapped. Just work your way around the perimeter very carefully. Don't go too deep. We want to be careful around the volume and power button flex cables. Once you get this thing started, it's pretty easy to take it off. And that will just come right out. Now, before we do much, we do have 2 pop connectors, the digitizer and the LCD, which I will point out here at the top left-hand side of the video. Those will need to be disconnected, and you'll also need to pull the flex cables for the volume and the power button controls away from the frame, as they do have adhesive holding them in place. So do not start prying anything until you have disconnected these 2 pop connectors and also loosened up the cables. You'll see here momentarily where I started to pry, and I could see that there was some resistance. Actually getting ahead of myself there a bit, we are going to plug in the touchscreen, and this is going to be a tricky maneuver because what I want to do is make sure that this is going to function. And of course, I'm going to have the digitizer facing one direction, the LCD facing a different direction, and what I want to be able to do is power this up. And you can see my power button actually fell out of the frame there. It's kind of underneath where the lens is now. So getting the battery to match up is a little bit tricky. You don't want to put a lot of pressure on the front screen, but you kind of have to hold the battery in place and then push the power button down. And once you feel the buzz, you'll know that you'll feel the phone buzz. You'll know that it's turning on. And if we flip it over here, you can kind of see the logo right behind where my thumb is. I'll move that out of the way. And what we're going to do is test the screen and make sure that we can unlock it before we actually proceed any further with the repair. And this phone does kind of take its time starting up. So once we get past the splash screen here, you will see the lock in the very center of the screen, and I'm just going to drag my finger across here on the digitizer on the left and make sure that it is functioning, so we can go ahead and continue. And there you can see I was able to unlock the screen there. So we can go ahead and proceed with our repair. So on the inside here, we've got these two. This is the LCD that we're going to disconnect. We've already disconnected the digitizer, and I started to remove this, but before we go too far, you'll be able to tell, and I wouldn't recommend being very careful. There's something still holding it in, and it is in fact the flex cable for the power button right here, and then also the volume connectors. So be sure that you get these pried away from the frame. If you have to, you might want to use a little bit of heat just to loosen them up, but do free those up before you go too far. If you tear them, it's going to kind of be a pain. You'll have to replace them, and that means ordering a new one or finding a donor phone. So you can see here I'm heating this up a little bit, and you'll see shortly here that I am prying them away from the housing. And there we have our logic board. We'll set that aside for now. And at this point, you could actually replace the LCD if you needed to. That is completely modular. Just take that apart, put a new one in, or in this case, I'm going to set it aside in as dust-free an area as possible. And this is probably going to be the hardest part of the repair right here. We need to heat this up and get the old screen off. So what you're going to do is pry right along the rails here and try to get the glass separated. Be careful, try not to cut yourself. This is glass, so it's tricky. But once you get in between here and the frame, you should be able to continuously heat this and just kind of work your way around the perimeter. Be careful on the bottom. There are some cables. They're actually not stuck to the glass, but if you're not careful, you can damage them. So just take your time and very slowly pull this thing apart, and you'll see here shortly what it looks like exposed on the inside. So you also want to be sure that there's no adhesive sticking to anything important inside there. And with this phone, you shouldn't have too much trouble. This is pretty straightforward. But that little white bar needs to be there so your buttons will light up. We're going to clean this up, get all the glass and all the old adhesive off. And you can see what I've done is I've placed some new adhesive. I am reusing some of the adhesive that was still in really tacky, sticky condition and didn't have any glass on it. But I did remove all the stuff that was dusty, had debris, and didn't feel like it was going to stick again. I've replaced that with some double stick 3M two-sided adhesive. So this is always the fun part because these things like to stick to the paper. So as I go to peel them off, it tends to take the adhesive with it, and we want it to actually stick to the phone. So this took me a minute to get them off, but at this point, it's pretty much downhill from here. So what we'll do now is take the inner layer of plastic off of the replacement lens, and as quickly as possible we want to install this and put our LCD back inside. There's a little plastic piece there, make sure that doesn't fall out. If it does, you can see where it goes. I was pointing out there just a second ago. Once you get your digitizer back inside the frame, we want to put the LCD in as soon as possible. Make sure there's no dust between the two, and the sooner we get those two pieces together, the less likely they are to accumulate any debris that is going to be an annoyance to the person using the phone later on. Make sure you have no fingerprints on the inside, and from here we can go ahead and reinstall or install the logic board and put the whole thing back together. And you can see I'm putting the volume and power buttons back in because they fell out when I was working with the housing. This will snap onto the back. Don't forget, we will want to go put the screws back in when we finish, but before we do that, we're going to do a test run and go ahead and put the SIM card in, put the battery inside, power up the phone, and make sure that the touch screen is functioning. And there you have it. Once again, don't forget, you do have 6 T5 screws that need to be put back into the rear side of the phone. If you found the video helpful, hit the like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to my channel, and follow me on Twitter or Facebook. Post your questions in the comment section below or visit gocellphonerepair.com/forum. Thanks for watching.